The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoop Ball presentation. I am your host, Dan Besbris, and it is Wednesday. It's Big Wednesday. And so before I get into any of the logistical stuff on today's episode, other than to say, thanks for listening. This is Hoop Ball, all that good stuff. Oh, and I promised to warn people, DFS stuff is about the first 20-25 minutes of the show. It's DFS day on the podcast. Wednesdays are DFS day because we've got the Beat the Expert contest going every single Wednesday for the foreseeable future. And joining us on this Wednesday to give us a little more information, because I suck at DFS. I am so bad. Mike Apotria, please, my God, man, fix me. What the hell, dude? I am the worst. How am I... Okay, and this is going to sound a little bit dickish, but how am I winning all of my roto leagues and getting creamed? I'm like bottom 3 every week in this DFS contest. Help me. Also, hello.
Well, Dan, that's what I'm here for.
Thank goodness.
I love going out of my way, helping a few people. And you're right. You crush your roto leagues. One thing I noticed that you do every single night is your things to watch. And a lot of the times, the things that you mention on in that little Twitter segment of yours are things that us DFS guys are watching for too. The other day when you were talking about, with Booker being ruled out, Okubo versus Josh Jackson's minutes. Well, those were 2 primary targets for a lot of DFS guys. So I feel like you're right there. You're right on the edge of it. You're just, maybe this week, if you jump into it again,
I will.
We'll break down your lineup maybe the following week, and we'll see what you did. I mean, maybe even if we get a few minutes sometime before lineups kick off, we'll talk about it.
Maybe I'll just put mine out.
What we could have done differently.
You know what? Because I'm not really winning would be fine, but honestly, at the end of the day, I'm totally fine with giving all of the people competing in this thing my $3 or however it works, just for the fun of it. To be a part of a thing, to be part of a DFS community here developing here at Hoop Ball. I actually have no problem, Mike, if I set my lineup. All right. So I was about to say I could just put my lineup out there on Twitter, and I don't care if people tell me I'm an idiot. The only problem with that is that means I have to set my lineup early, and that's actually what killed me last week. And I feel like there's a pretty obvious lesson to be learned here. On our contest on Friday last week, I set my lineup at about 2:30 Pacific time, so about 90 minutes before lineup lock, because Brewski and I do a live show on Fridays at 3 that runs right up to lineup lock, meaning any late-breaking news, I am bleep up a creek. And it was. Devin Booker was a late scratch on Friday. He was my second most expensive player, and so the moment that happened, I was like, well, I'm cooked again. So you basically have to be at your computer at 4 o'clock or 3:55 Pacific and ready to make last-minute adjustments, right? If you take this seriously, you need to be there.
Oh, 100%. And it's one of the things I mentioned in the DFS guide that I wrote up for Hoop Ball. It's imperative to be around the news, know all the news, be around your computer, and have ample access to your lineups at all times. And, that's a major problem that a lot of the guys that make 150 lineups run into. If you don't have an exporting format where you can change, let's say, Kelly Oubre or Devin Booker in all of your lineups, you have to go through singly in every single lineup and do that. So it's why I highly recommend for the beginners, for the guys that are just getting into it, worry about your 1 or your 2 lineups at first. You don't need to pack a bunch in there. Just worry about being profitable first. You might even hit the nuts on one of these in a big GPP or big contest anyway. But the late swaps are huge. We just saw last night, for instance, there being a big late swap the other day with Boban. Once we saw Gortat was ruled out, it was at 10 o'clock. You had to throw Boban in right away. And last night with Mirotic being ruled out, Julius Randle became an instant must play at 6,700 on DraftKings, where if you set your lineup in the right way, where, playing Mirotic or Julius Randle at power forward, if you wanted to swap out Mirotic, it gives you less options. Whereas if you have that spot opened up at your forward spot and you're saying, well, Mirotic just got ruled out, well, now you could choose between power forwards and small forwards. Or even in your utility spot, it gives you a whole different realm of positions you can look at to switch in late swap with. So I would highly recommend monitoring the news up until lineups lock and even after.
So let's, and it's a little bit early in the morning to really get a good feel for what's going on over the course of this week. But let's say, let's look at Monday as a nice example, just because that's all, everything is done. I haven't yet talked about the Tuesday card on this podcast, so I feel like I'd almost be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit there. If you look all the way back to Monday, and I know it's Wednesday, so like things that happened on Monday are basically done. But I don't know if anybody went back to back earlier this week, and if they did, it was very few teams. Like Oklahoma City and Detroit. Would there have been a scenario leading into that game where you might have played Nerlens Noel in a DFS lineup? I'm guessing the answer is no, because you couldn't really know it was going to be a blowout.
No, and to be honest and truth, guys like Nerlens Noel and guys like that hit on those nights, they are owned. You'll go through those contests and you'll see that 0.07%. There's some guy at the top of the winners pool that had him, and half the time that is because you're running so many lineups. Some people, like I said, play 150, if not more, lineups in one single contest. I don't play that. I do multiple lineups. I don't go that heavy on it. Mm-hmm. I believe it's a little bit too much to manage sometimes. I have a busy schedule at points. But, yeah, some people do keep him in their player pool. And then you have to also envision a game scenario. So if he played him in one lineup, the one lineup you're going to play him in is one where maybe you avoided Steven Adams because you thought Steven Adams was going to get in foul trouble, and then Nerlens Noel would have to come off the bench, and you would have to play against Andre Drummond. That wasn't the case. Steven Adams went bananas as well, but I'm guessing the guy that did play him probably played him with that scenario, and I can imagine that Steven Adams wouldn't be in the same lineup with him.
Elsewhere from the Monday card, Mike, just kind of looking through it, Golden State, Atlanta was one of the games from Monday where you kind of figured the Warriors would probably would eventually blow them out. Is that a game where, as you're planning for the future, if you see a game, and maybe looking at Vegas lines as part of this this planning, where that game on Monday, the Warriors were, I believe, like an 11-point road favorite. If you see a double-digit spread, does that make you think, all right, you know what, I could look at reserves as cheap options here in a potential blowout situation? How do you try to find those really cheap guys if it's not an injury sub?
You hit the nail on the head right there, and it's one guy that I remember seeing your tweet on Monday. You brought up Jeremy Lin. So that's the first place I would have looked at in this spot. So essentially, if you think this game's going to blow out, and we've seen it in the past with the Hawks, that when they get blown out, Jeremy Lin tends to play a little bit more, and Trae Young takes a little bit more of a backseat on the bench. And in those games, we've seen Jeremy Lin hit value in DraftKings, FanDuel, and across all the sites, plus some. So that's a good spot to target. But you also need to factor in like what spots are worth even looking at. So a lot of times you might see a blowout scenario, and not all bench guys with extra minutes are going to be treated equally. So one major thing I factor into is the player's usage rate and their usage percentage, however you'd like to say it, going into a game and in the certain scenarios. So, looking at a guy like Jeremy Lin, we know he chucks. We know he is heavily involved with the offense if he's the main primary point guard on the floor. There's other scenarios where the backup point guard might be, let's say Ish Smith. And maybe if Ish Smith is getting 20 minutes compared to another player's 20 minutes, it's not going to be treated in equally. And it also matters about the pace as well. The Warriors play at a high pace. They play at a fast pace. They allow a lot of buckets on defense, especially with Draymond Green out. So that was like a picture-perfect formula just kind of drawn up for Jeremy Lin. And I personally, I wasn't on him very much. I probably should have been on him more. He had a good game, 14, 5, and 5. But I was a little bit worried and hesitant in one of those first games back from injury. Maybe they just kind of play him around that 19, 18-minute mark. But it goes to show you that if you think the Hawks are going to get blown out, you can play Jeremy Lin.
All right, now the other side of this coin. How do you pick your expensive guys in a DFS lineup? Because that's another spot where I'll admit, I get a little jammed up. I'm like, all right, well, I'm looking at LeBron. I'm looking at Russell Westbrook. I'm looking at all these guys. How do you choose which super pricey guy gets in your lineup? Because I'll admit, Mike, there was like a 2-week stretch a couple years ago where I just played in free DFS contests just to see if I could figure the game out a little bit. And the one thing that I determined was building a roster of a whole bunch of middling priced guys was a really bad idea. That just didn't work. It was like a bunch of guys giving me 25 DFS points apiece, and at the end of the day, that wasn't enough. It seems like you need to go deal hunting and superstar hunting, because then you can get the maximum value for your dollar. So first question is, did I totally misread that situation? And there is some value to mid-tier guys. And then the second question is going to be about the pricey dudes, but I'll wait to ask that one. What's the best way to build a lineup? Is it cheap and expensive, or is it a whole bunch of middle-priced guys?
So the truth is, there really is no perfect answer, and a lot of it determines on the slate, or depends on the slate that you're
Interesting.
playing.
Okay.
So we look at Monday night, and for instance, what was there? I believe 7 games on. Tonight for the Beat the Expert, it's 10 games. So when there's 10 games, you're a little bit less concerned about ownership. This guy's in an obvious spot, and while it makes so much sense to play, when you're competing in a GPP, you want to be in first place out of 40, 50,000 people. So sometimes avoiding the guys that everybody else is going to play and beyond is a way to kind of take advantage of it. We see guys bust in spots all the time. So I can get back. I can talk about that for hours, but it really does determine on the slate. And yes, I always look to see what kind of value. I look at all the pricey guys on the slate. I'll look at, for instance, if we look at tonight's schedule, we know we're going to have some pricey guys. We see that the Warriors are going to be playing. Jokic will probably be up there around fair price. We're gonna see Russell Westbrook on the slate. We're gonna have Embiid on the slate. Kawhi Leonard, Giannis. We're gonna have Davis. Plenty of places to spend the money. So what you need to factor in, the next thing is, do I have enough value to spend that money? You can go and plug in Davis any night of the week. He's going to be great 9 times out of 10, unless he takes a trip to the locker room. But you have to factor in, if you're playing a guy that's $11,000 to $12,000, do you have the correlation, the other guy that is 4 or 5 or 3 that you feel comfortable with still hitting value? And there's some nights where you just don't have that value. So taking that middle of the road approach and going with a little bit more of the middle tier guys is the way to go. And truth is, there's value no matter what the price of the player is. There's value if a guy's $9,000. There's value if a guy's $3,000. There's sometimes, where we saw the other night, John Wall priced under $9,000 on DraftKings. That was a smash spot, and he's just too cheap to be $9,000. Gary Harris, unfortunately, he got hurt. He was a guy I was looking at. 5,100 was just way too cheap for Gary Harris. So there's always value, and a lot of the times, like I recommend, it's a 5X rule. That's the basic general way that a lot of DFS guys start. In tournaments, you're looking for a little bit more than 5X. But what that means is, if you pay $5,000 on DraftKings for said player, you're expecting at least 25 DraftKings points.
Oh, interesting.
So
okay.
5 times the value. So if you're spending $9,000, you're expecting at least minimum 45 DraftKings points for them to hit that value. And if you're playing in a larger field tournaments, you're really looking for more. So that's one way I construct my lineup. And I look at, what is this guy's upside? Does he even have me the upside potentially to win this tournament? Cody Zeller can go out there and score 20 DraftKings points every week. But is 20 DraftKings points going to get it done in a tournament with 50,000 people? Probably not. He's probably a better play for those cash games I always talk about, the 50-50s, where if you're playing against 100 people and you only need to finish in the top 50 to win, double your money up, then that's probably the safer option. But in these larger field tournaments, you almost want to be a little bit riskier, but you have to know the spots to take the risks.
That is excellent stuff. I didn't know about that 5X rule. So what eliminates... you know what? I don't want to get sidetracked because I had a follow-up question. I want to stick to my guns on this one. So how do you pick the expensive guy then? What are you looking at when you're selecting the superstar to throw into your lineup?
Oh, definitely. So the number one thing I look at is the matchup. I'll take a look at the over-under and the total. Like you said, that's the first thing I do every morning. I wake up, I brew my coffee, I hit the Vegas over-unders.
You mean your Hawaiian Isles Kona coffee? Is that that's the coffee you brew in the morning?
Yeah, that is the only thing in my cup.
That's right. That's what I'm talking about. All right, please continue.
On deck. And it's indicative to kind of know which games you're going to target right off the bat, I guess. So you're always looking for those games with the high totals and the closer spreads, because it's going to be a back and forth game where there's going to be extra rebounds and extra points being scored. So I look for kind of, let's see if there's a superstar in one of those types of games. If you see a game where it's, particularly, like, I love targeting Damian Lillard versus Golden State. He gets to travel back to Oakland. He's a guy that's playing in a fast-paced matchup. He has a great DVP and great career history against them. So,
wait. What's a DVP?
Defensive versus position.
Aha,
so
okay.
That's what DVP stands for. You'll actually see when you're building your DraftKings lineups, you'll see that little DVP marker, and that just means what that it might say fifth in red, and that means that, let's say, if the point guard's facing the team's defense is the fifth best against point guards as far as DraftKings points.
Oh, okay.
And that, that's a helpful tool, but again, it's not always indicative. Sometimes it goes by, matchup. Size is a big difference. They may have a great defense, but now you're playing a 6'6" point guard tonight, or you're playing Ben Simmons, who's running point guard tonight. So you can kind of throw that stat right out the window. So it's definitely indicative. It's going to be matchup. It's going to be pace of play. Defense, like DVP, is another big thing I look at. You kind of also have to, like I said, know your slate. And sometimes you don't need to go all the way up to 11,500. If I feel comfortable at Damian Lillard, like I said, if I have that matchup where Damian Lillard's playing Golden State and he's only 9,000, well, I'm going to play him over Steph Curry and Durant at 10-5 or 11. I think he's going to outscore him at 9. And then if you notice in the other hand that let's say it's not that matchup, and you're looking at Kevin Durant at 11,000, he's the most expensive guy on the slate, and the next most expensive guy might be 8. Well, that's just a raw point scenario. Kevin Durant might be the only player on that slate where he can get you to 260, 70, or 80 DraftKings points. It may not happen, but we know he has that upside. And if you're one of the 20% of the people who play that guy who has 80 points on that night, well, you're riding gold right there.
Mike, this was exceedingly illuminating. This is the type of stuff that I'm learning with all of you guys listening out there. I'm learning with you on this DFS side, and I'm also learning what questions need to be asked as well, because the more I play it, the more I realize all the things that I screwed up. So lesson number 1 was obviously make sure you're there near lineups lock so you can get the injured guys out of your lineups. Lesson number 2 is the 5X rule. That's a good one. I didn't know about that one. Understanding DVP and what that means from the DraftKings site, how to pick your expensive guys. And then, Mike, I assume you'll be on Twitter most of today, Wednesday, to answer questions from folks as they set their DFS lineups?
Of course. I'm always on Twitter. You can always find me at Mike Apotria. That's MikeApotria.
Beautiful.
Just shoot any message you have at me, regardless. Daily fantasy season long. I'll jump on it right when I see it.
It might be me.
I believe we had a question, didn't we? Do we have a?
Oh yeah, we did. We did have a question, and I almost forgot to bring that up.
A Twitter question.
Let me see if I can go find that. Yes, that's right. Ben on Twitter asked a question for the DFS pod. I'm a solid DFS player, but it feels like I'm always one player away from winning big. Screw you, Ben. I'm one player away from getting out of the bottom 10. What advice do you have to get over that hump? That is, if I would have chosen X player instead of Y, I'd be in the top on a nightly basis. How do you, Mike, get over that hump? Or is it just like the reason that hump is there is because getting over it only happens every once in a while? That's me adding a little bit to the end of the question.
Well, it's definitely part of that. I mean, it's to really nail a lineup where everybody's on fire and you're finishing that top 5 or 10 in a mass field GPP. There is a little bit of luck involved, but luck comes with preparation. I mean, if you prepare and you do your research, you're going to get lucky one of these times. It's that simple. Yeah. What I'd recommend if you need help getting over that hump, I would say, definitely go back and review the winning lineups from previous nights. Try to understand the construction of how those lineups are made in a large field GPP. Maybe go back and look at your notes and see, were I on any of these guys? Why was I off that guy? What made him on that guy? And, what kind of upside did he see in it? And, you asked, that's another thing is the upside. Think of the relative upside. When you're talking about player X and Y, you're never really comparing just one or two players unless they're the exact same price at the exact same position. Because if you have a $10,000 player and you're wondering which guy, if he's better than a $9,000 player, well, we got to understand there's $1,000 left over, and where's that going? So you really got to look at it as a 2 versus 2. Because if I take out X player, that means I have money to increase another player. So I'm really looking at the 2-person combo and add that up to go total and see which guys, which 2 versus 2 I like better than compared to which 1 versus 1 I like better. And just know your strong suit. Kind of take a notice the way you've been playing lately, what kind of contests that you succeed in more. You might be a 50-50 player to start, and you know what? That's fine. That's how I started off. I didn't start off entering multi-tournament entries into mass field GPPs. I started off doing a buck or two in 50-50 contests until I built my bankroll up and I felt comfortable getting in these large field GPPs. And just stay on top of everything. Monitor the news, monitor the situations, be ready to late swap, and have a plan in place before lineups even lock in case you do need to late swap. Keep those guys that you're worried about that in the later games, in the lower to the forward, the guard, and the utility positions, because if you do need to swap them out, you'll have yourself more options.
So what about the hoop ball contest? This will be my last question before I let you get back to your day. Is this one in a 50-person contest where the top 10 win? Do you treat that as more of a safe contest, or do you treat that more of a large competition? Because it feels like it's kind of in between the two.
It definitely is. And so what I'll do is I'll treat it just like it's in between, just like you said. So I'll take a few less shots than I might in a large field GPP tournament. I think in the last weeks I played a lot of Wayne Ellington because I felt like he was a safe play. It completely busted on me. And same thing with Markieff Morris. Those are guys that my larger field GPPs I tend to avoid because I knew that they were going to be highly owned. If 50% of people have Markieff Morris and he has a good game, well, yeah, cool. Now half the people in the contest have that good game. But if you avoid him and he has a bad game, well, now you're ahead of those 50% of the people. So depending on the size of the tournament, it's definitely a major factor. I tend to go middle of the road. I might throw in a few sneaky plays or a sneaky play or two that I do like, but I'm still going to have to feel very, very confident in it because, again, in our weekly contest, you're only allowed one entry. And that's my problem. I'm a multi-enter guy, so I might make 15, 10 lineups, sometimes 20, and that's like, all right, now which one do I pick for this important contest where, honestly, I want this T-shirt more than the money. Give me another T-shirt, please.
A T-shirt, by the way, is the one that Brew and I wear on our live shows on Friday. It is a sweet T-shirt. The great Adrian Benjamin's in charge of making those bad boys. So go enter the contest. It's $3 to get into that thing today. If you open up a new DraftKings account through Hoopball, you got to do it through our portal. Make sure to ask us if you have any questions about that. Go to hoop-ball.com, and it's one of the options under the premium tab. If you open up a new account and put $10 in it, you get the in-season premium membership at Hoopball completely free. If you put in $10 of DraftKings in your new account, they will give you a free $3 competition certificate. So you actually basically get $13 in your account, and that'd get you 4 entries and with $1 left over into our Hoopball competitions. If you win any one of those 4, you'll bring back $15, and then you can just keep on playing. Or you can cash out. I don't care. Do whatever you want with it. That's more of a best-case scenario. You can just keep on winning. Mike Apotria, the great Mike Apotria, try to beat him today in the Hoopball Beat the Expert DFS contest. Mike, thanks a bunch.
Thank you, Dan.
I think I may have said contrast. You need to learn how to talk, do an interview, and then talk. That's it. That's the job over here. I just need to be able to speak, and then I can actually successfully do my job. But apparently that's not going to be the case. We have the DFS link. It's out. It's on Twitter. It's everywhere. Mike is tweeting it as well, at Mike Apotria, at Dan Besbris, at Aaron Brewski is tweeting them, at Hoopball Fantasy is tweeting them, at Hoopball Tweets is tweeting them. The links, they are a-coming. As of the time of recording this segment of the podcast, the room is half full. And yes, that's right. I am an optimist. It's half full with about 6.5 hours to go before the contest starts, so 25 out of 50 people in, which is pretty good considering we got the link yesterday, Tuesday, at like 6 p.m. or something. So it seems like a lot of you guys have been just itching to get into this contest, and it's open. Start working on your lineups now. Build your whole lineup. Have a contingency plan, just like Mike was talking about. If one of your guys gets hurt, if you're throwing a guy in your lineup that has a possibility of being a late scratch, be ready to make those last-minute adjustments. You really have to be at your computer at 3:50 Pacific time to make those adjustments. I couldn't have learned it any better than I did in that last one because I just keep coming in dead last. And I don't think I would have been good in that last one. I don't know if there's a way to look at old contests you played in on DraftKings, but if I could, I would go back and I would look at that lineup from last week and say, okay, well, what would have happened? Oh, they do have a history thing. They have a history criteria, so maybe I can go to that. I was dead last. Dead last. 41 out of 41 people in that tournament on Friday. For a couple of reasons. Number one, LeBron James. He didn't do as well as I thought he would. I thought he'd have a really big game against Dallas, but his rebounds and his assists were both on the relatively low side. Reason number two was that I went Markieff Morris and Kelly Oubre, and they got spanked in a blowout loss to the Philadelphia 76ers. Reason number three was that Devin Booker sat it out. And reason number 4 is that Cody Zeller, who was my cheapo guy that I thought I could just get like 20 points out of, hurt his ribs in the first quarter. So there were a lot of reasons that I screwed this thing up. There were some things I did on Friday that were actually really good. I put D. Wade into my lineup. He had a 34-point fantasy night, very cheap. That was a good one. I had Tim Frazier in my lineup. He had 27 points. He was super cheap. Jimmy Butler had 35 points. He was actually not that expensive. But it was those other guys that killed me. I had 5 out of my 8 guys that just didn't perform. And, I think I could have gotten away with LeBron only having 41 points, which would have been a bit of a down night for him. But Markieff Morris not doing anything, Kelly Oubre not doing anything, and then obviously Devin Booker, who was my second most expensive guy. I figured it was going to be a nice shootout with the Orlando Magic, and then he didn't play. If you put Booker in there with a 40-point game, well, I'm still in the bottom third, but at least I'm not dead last by 30 points. And the winning lineup, I wasn't even close. The winning lineup was our buddy JC DeLeon, one of our hosts here at Hoopball, who hosts one of our premium shows in the evening. His lineup, and I look at other people's lineups and these things, I'm like, how did you get all of these guys? It seems like it should have cost too much. But he had some really good ones. Jay Crowder was not that expensive. He had a big game for him. Jeremy Lamb, Wendell Carter Jr. had a nice game, his first in a while. Kyle Kuzma had a huge one for the Lakers that night. That was a great pick. His expensive guys were LeBron and Kyrie. So he had LeBron, and he sort of got away with it because his other picks were so good. The guy who got second place had Markieff Morris. So he had a clunker as well, but he had Clint Capella, who had 55. Mike Conley had 61. That was a brilliant play. And he wasn't even that expensive. So these are the things you go back and you look at what happened in the past and try to figure out what you could have done better. As I look at these lineups, it's like, okay, Mike Conley does make sense. He played against a Brooklyn team that's not defending anybody right now. They're just getting in these high-scoring games. I believe that one went overtime as well, so that's a double bonus. Justin Holiday worked out really well for him because he had extra stuff. He had sort of a stuff-type games. Blake Griffin makes a lot of sense. He's a perfect DFS kind of guy. Marcus Smart, he got that spot start, so that was a wise decision. You look for these things. These are the things you can do at the last minute that I couldn't because I was live on air as that was going on. Also want to note, by the way, that it is official. Our partners over at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee will be contributing the number 2, the second place prize in our DFS contest this week. So here are the rules, and then we're going to get on to the full season fantasy stuff here. The rules and regulations. The DFS contest is called Beat the Expert. We're tweeting out the links all the time. You have to beat Mike Apotria, and that's the fun part. The important part is it's a $3 buy-in, top 10 spots in a 50-person contest, pay $15 a piece. Number 1 gets a t-shirt, a Hoopball t-shirt that you guys have seen me wearing on our Friday live shows. Number 2 gets a sample bag of Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee. You're going to get some goodies, a goodie pack that's worth about $20 or $25, I believe. And then, in addition, by the way, of course, to the $15 you get for first and second place, then third through 10th place, those guys just get the $15. The contest is today. It's Wednesday. It's going to be Wednesdays going forward, which is awesome. Thank goodness we're going in the middle of the week, which means I can, most Wednesdays, check my lineup while the child is napping on my lap. He tends to nap on my lap on weekday afternoons. So, parenting fail, but at least I can check my DFS lineup. So come on down. Stop on by. Hop a carpet and fly to a DFS contest. Yes, I've been watching cartoons with my kid. Let's get into some full season stuff now, since we're about halfway through this podcast, and I know a lot of you are like, DFS stuff. I might even go back, and you'll know, because I'm going to say it right now, I might even go back to the beginning of the podcast and just throw in a little, hey, if you're interested in no DFS stuff, jump to like the 28-minute mark. And if I don't do it, well, then you're hearing me talk about it right now, and you're like, that son of a bee, he didn't go back and do it. It was a relatively short Tuesday card, but it's been an extremely eventful 2 days of fantasy information. I mean, we spent a ton of time on yesterday's podcast going over just a 7-game Monday card, and it was a 5-game Tuesday card, but I feel like every day we're getting into some really thick stuff. And I always say, well, I'm not going to make this thing a box score show. We're going to go on storylines, and the storylines, they're almost coming from every game right now. There are guys that are My Yahoo watch list these days is crazy long. It's 25 players long. I can't do it. I got to take guys off the watch list because I don't want to have to go 2 pages on Yahoo. Like looking back at Monday, we had something from the Oklahoma City side. We had a storyline we were watching on the Detroit side. We had a storyline we're watching with Atlanta. We were watching the Knicks. We were watching the Wizards, the Cavs, the Nets, the Clippers. Even Tim Frazier on the Pelicans. We were watching Houston, Minnesota. There was, 2 teams that played out of the 14 on Monday that I didn't just say? 3? 11 out of the 14 teams. And then yesterday, on a 10-team, a 5-game Tuesday, I would venture to say that we were watching something in 7 out of the 10 games, out of the 10 teams that played yesterday. I'll tell you right now the teams where we weren't really paying close attention to them. Portland, although you could say with Evan Turner back, we were sort of watching Mo Harkless, but Turner's back, so that's no longer a thing. We weren't really watching Portland. We weren't really watching Dallas. We weren't really watching Utah. Things are pretty set in stone out there. And maybe we weren't really watching the Kings. The Kings are fairly predictable these days, so I would say either 6 of the 7 teams had storylines from Tuesday night. Let's dig into them now. Chicago. Lauri Markkanen, in his second game back, played 32 minutes. It's always great to have guys coming back from arm injuries because once they're good to go, they're just good to go because they've been doing conditioning work on the side. He didn't shoot the ball well, 8 out of 24, but he made 5 3-pointers, double-doubled with 21 points, 10 boards, had 2 steals and a block, which is always the stuff you're worried about with Markkanen. And the best news of all is that his ramp-up in minutes came at the expense mostly of Jabari Parker. Thank goodness for that. The Bulls under Jim Boylan did something right. So Fred Hoiberg got fired. This was something that maybe we should have seen coming. Jim Boylan, kind of an old school guy, learning the new school game. But old school coaches, the first thing they're going to look at is who's giving effort on the defensive end in particular. And we know Jabari Parker's not because he said it. I don't even need to watch the game. He said out loud before the season started he's not paid to play defense. He had 12 and 8 with 4 turnovers. Very empty line for Parker. The sell-high window is basically closed. There was a universe where he might have been able to fall into some fantasy value, and he did for a little bit there. But it's looking more and more like as this team gets healthy, Parker is going to be the guy that gets drilled, and then all of the cavalry of crap dink backup point guards is next. So Markkanen played 32 minutes, Parker down to 29 from he was in the mid-30s before. Also in the good news department, Justin Holiday played 41 minutes in yesterday's game. I think there was a lot of fear, and rightfully so, that Justin Holiday would take a hit as the Bulls get healthy, and he probably will, a small hit. But the fear was that he would fall from what he's been so far this year, which is a top 35 9-cat guy. Justin Holiday is number 34 on the year right now. He's only 6 slots behind his brother, Drew, who was drafted in the second round generally, and Holiday was picked up off the waiver wire. One of the pickups of the year. Maybe the pickup of the year so far. But I think people were afraid he was going to fall to like top 100. I don't know that that's going to be the case. I think you're looking at maybe a drop-off towards top 60, top 70 maybe. Because he's still playing minutes, and he's the perfect complement. Levine needs the ball in his hand. Chris Dunn is going to need the ball in his hand. Markkanen doesn't really. He's a shooter at his core. Wendell Carter Jr., big man that can get to the rim. What they don't have on that list is a 3-and-D guy. Someone to space the floor at the wing, to guard some people, to get steals, get out in transition, do all the little stuff. And that's perfect Justin Holiday territory. He had a usage rate of 13 in yesterday's game, and he still had a fantastic fantasy line. That's precisely what that team needs. Also in the good news department for Chicago, Bobby Portis, Chris Dunn participated in full contact practice. We talked about that on yesterday's podcast. They should be back within the week. I mean, we might get word when the hell do these guys play next? They play tonight. No, that's not true. They play tomorrow. Nope, that's not true either. They play on Friday. Good work, Dan. They play on Friday. You might see those guys back for one of their back-to-backs. Friday, Saturday this weekend, Oklahoma City and Boston. You might see Dunn and Portis play in one of those games. Awesome. So bye-bye, Ryan Arcidiacono. Arcidiacono. There we go. I got that right that time. Bye-bye, Shaq Harrison. Bye-bye, Campaign. Bobby Portis is a question mark. I'm not 100% sure where all of his minutes come from. I think you're going to see Jabari Parker take another little hit. I don't think you're going to see Wendell Carter Jr. and Markkanen each play 32 minutes. I think you're going to see a lot of these guys fall back into that 28 to 30 range. But if they drop Parker back down towards 24, there's 5 coming off of him. Maybe 3 or 4 comes off of Justin Holiday as Parker slides over. 4 off of Markkanen, 4 off of Carter. What does that get us to? Like 20? I don't know that Bobby Portis is going to be a 30-minute guy. I think he's going to be low to mid-20s this year. He's probably going to be a top 120 guy. And if you're in a volume-type league, then he's probably worth owning. I don't know about standard 9 cats. I think you grab him and you see how it plays out, but I'm not convinced that he's going to hold value all season long. And plus, these 2 guys, Dunn and Portis, they're coming back from leg injuries, so it's going to be a slower ramp-up. The Indiana side, also a team we were paying close attention to, and Darren Collison, the line of the night. That's nice to see. How many guys played last night? That's a good question. I think it was like 105 players actually saw the basketball court. 106, that's your final number. Worst line of the night, by the way, from a team value perspective, goes to Mo Bamba. Interesting footnote. Because he missed both of his free throws and had 3 turnovers to go along with a largely empty line. That should be a game we play on this podcast. Who had the worst fantasy line of the night? Who actually hurt your team more by playing than getting a DNP? And it was Mo Bamba yesterday. Anyway, of the 106 players that played on Tuesday night, Darren Collison had the best line for your team of any of them. 23 points, 8 boards, 3 assists, 3 3-pointers, 6 out of 7 shooting from the field, and a perfect 8 for 8 at the free throw line. This is the game that reminds us all why we don't drop a dude who has been top 50 and whose role only changed a little bit. Now, grain of salt, right? No Victor Oladipo. A lot of Collison's better games have come with Vic on the shelf. But looking back at last year, when Collison was a top 50 guy for the season, it's because of percentages, and he's still nowhere close to his career mark in those numbers. He's shooting 44% this year. He's career 47%, and over the last 5 or 6 seasons, basically if you wipe out some of his very early years in the NBA, he's actually much closer to 48, 48.5. And he's at 44, again, so he's working his way up. He's making just 0.8 3-pointers per game this year, which would be his lowest since 2012. In the modern NBA, that makes no sense. He's shooting 75.5% at the free throw line, although he has now made his last 13 in a row. So that number is coming up. He's inching his way towards Darren of seasons past, and this is why, through all the awful stuff, I was like, you got to just keep him on your bench, because heaven forbid this dude gets it turned around. He's a difference maker in 9-cat that you're not going to want to see on somebody else's team. By totals, by the way, because he's been so durable this year, he's actually number 86 in 9-category formats. By averages, he's number 109. 2 good games, he went from number 160 to 109. That's how easily you can leap in that area. Now, he's going to need a week or 2 if he wants to get into that top 75 range, but it's a possibility. It's no longer far-reaching pipe dream stuff. So thank goodness we held on tight. He's showing signs of life in a big way. Miles Turner, he's been playing better of late. He did have a dud mixed in there a little bit, but Miles is on the rise. He's sitting inside the top 75 right now, and with the elite block stuff, I think you just have to assume that that's going to keep going. Domantas Sabonis slowing down a tiny bit. Maybe that's part of why Miles Turner's been able to get going a little. Thad Young got to 29.5 minutes. He was 30 seconds away from hitting that 30-minute barrier that we've been tracking. And he is, by all accounts, hanging on by a thread and has been for a couple of weeks now. He had that 5-steal game blended in there. But at the moment, Steals is really the only category where he's helping you. Somebody put out an article, one of the indie bloggers put out an article that said Thad Young has lost his jump shot. I don't know if he ever really had one, but he was making .7 3-pointers last year, while also still shooting 49%. His shooting percentage is down from his career mark. He's not making threes. His free throws are at a career low. His rebounds are down because Turner and Sabonis are both healthy. Steals are down because his minutes are lower. It's a tough call right now, but I think you're probably moving on. We did this comparison last week just on Collison versus Thad and why one was worth holding and the other not. Because by all accounts, looking back at last season, the two guys weren't separated by that much in their overall numbers. Darren Collison last year was number 46. 46, guys, by averages in 9-cap format. And Thaddeus Young was number 69. So they were only 2 rounds apart. So why, when both guys were hovering in that 160 range this year, did I say hold Collison and I don't really care what you do with Thad Young? The reason is mean reversion pointed towards Collison working his way out of that territory, whereas with Thad Young, it all came down to opportunity. His percentages, yes, free throw percent is down, but it's not a big part of his game anyway, and it's generally bad regardless. But his field goal percent was basically right on the mark from last year and the year before. The steals, a tiny bit down, rebounds down, points down, all of that stuff was down because he was playing 28 minutes instead of 32. He needs another 15% time on the floor, and it just doesn't look like that's available with Doug McDermott available for Indiana, Bojan Bogdanovic, who can play the 4 a little bit, Miles Turner, who slides down to play the 4 when he and Sabonis are on the court together. You need an injury to either Turner or Sabonis, in my estimation, to open up enough minutes for Thad Young to get back into that top 100 spot. So that's why he is a guy you can at least consider dropping, and Darren Collison never really was. Orlando, we were watching Jonathan Isaac, who played 31 and a half minutes, 12 points, 6 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 4 out of 5 shooting, 4 for 4 at the free throw line, 0 turnovers. He didn't need any 3-pointers, but do we care? Stellar game. Number 2 overall game on the night, behind Darren Collison in terms of helpful impact to your fantasy team, just because of how many things he did well. And he's ready, guys. To me, he's ready to go. Terrence Ross still played 30 minutes in this game, which is an interesting development. Evan Fournier is the guy who's actually getting squeezed out a little in Orlando. And you know what, honestly, if old man Fournier's got to go to make room for Jonathan Isaac, I'm fine with that. I drafted Fournier around 100 or later in a couple of leagues. I traded him in one. If I have to drop him in another one, screw it. I don't care. I'll do it. I got to get Jonathan Isaac into my lineup post-freaking haste. The Miami Heat. Oh, Lord. Where do we even begin with the Miami Heat? Okay, we'll start at the top. We'll work our way down the list. It's not good right now for Miami. It's not good. Hassan Whiteside played 25 minutes. He had 12 and 9 with a steal and 3 blocks, and he missed 2 more free throws. The free throw situation for Whiteside right now is crazy. I have to believe this thing levels off somehow because he's shooting 47% at the free throw line, which is a career worst number on a career high attempts per game. Something's going on between the ears, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was because he's getting blamed for seemingly everything in Miami. Anytime they fall behind in a game, it's like, well, let's just blame Whiteside. And so last night, with about 45 seconds to go in the game, and Miami well behind, just getting waxed by Orlando in a battle for Florida, Whiteside just got up and went to the locker room. He was done. I know you don't do that to your teammates, but I also kind of don't blame him. He's become the GOAT, really. He's become the GOAT for this team, where anytime anything is going wrong, it's Whiteside's fault. Even though, by all accounts, he actually played an okay game. He went 6 for 7 from the field. He was protecting the rim at times. He's slow by modern NBA standards, and he's going to have a lot of trouble handling a guy who can step away like Nick Vucevic. But he's not the reason they're losing these basketball games. The reason they're losing these basketball games is because the guys around him are equally bad. Dwayne Wade is 55 years old. Rodney McGruder isn't good. Wayne Ellington can only shoot the 3 ball. Josh Richardson is slumping, so then they're in a real pickle because he's basically their only good basketball player. Justice Winslow, he's playing 31 minutes even though he's terrible. Tyler Johnson, not good. James Johnson, old, not good anymore. Kelly Olynyk, you could make an argument, is actually a decent fit for the modern NBA. And he had a solid basketball game. So here's where I stand with the Heat. Number one, Tyler Johnson came back. He played 13 minutes. Everybody was like, well, is he going to go crazy? The answer is no, because as they get healthy, everybody gets squeezed. Miami's best course of action is to have some of their worst players just get hurt so they don't have to worry about keeping them happy. That's a sad thing to say, but it's true. The Dwayne Wade farewell tour inches closer with every loss the Heat suffer. Who, by the way, I believe they had won 2 games prior to suffering this defeat at the hands of the Magic, who, Orlando, by the way, golf clap for the Orlando Magic, they sit at 12-12. They're a 500 ball club. They're a half game ahead of the Hornets to lead that division. The Heat are 9-14. Woof. 5 games under 500. Luckily, in the East, if you're a 500 team, you've got a shot to make the 8 seed. So nothing is done early in the season except for teams like the Hawks and seemingly the Cavs now with Kevin Love out for a long stretch. I do think the Bulls end up going on a little bit of a run at some point as they get healthy. They're a better team than they've shown so far. Getting off topic. Hassan Whiteside is a hold. If you can't deal with the free throw stuff, I don't blame you because the run he's on is obscene. He made 2 out of 7 free throws on the 23rd in Chicago, and that's been the best night for him since. Hassan Whiteside has made 4 total free throws in the team's last 6 games. You guys ready for this? He's attempted 26. He's 4 of his last 26 at the free throw line. I can't even believe it. I can't even believe that kind of stretch. That's worse than the worst DeAndre Jordan stretches we've seen. He's totally a punt guy right now. And this is a dude you're relying on to float your team in rebounds and blocks, and you almost have to bench him because I know for me, I have him in a Roto league, and he's single-handedly tanking my team's free throw percent. I don't know what the full totals are for free throw percent. My team's at 771 at this point in the year. I would venture to guess that if you took out Whiteside's 4 for 26, is that what I just said? His 22 missed free throws and his 4 makes, that 771 is more like mid-780s. That's costing me like 4 Roto points right now, the last 2 weeks of Hassan Whiteside. And luckily, it's a long season, so this type of stuff tends to balance out. But damn, that is rough. Second guy on the list I wanted to talk about with the Heat is Kelly Olynyk, who I've picked up in a number of places because on the off chance he can actually get 25 minutes or more on a night-to-night basis, he's an easy fantasy asset. Easy. And it's not even a question. We know what he can do when he gets 25 minutes. When he doesn't get 25 minutes, it's not going to get there. Over his last 2 weeks, he's averaging 22 minutes. He's number 106 in 9-category format. And over the last week, he's averaging 27 minutes, and he's a top 50 guy. Simple as that. When you have the Kelly Olynyk fantasy stat set, meaning threes, points, rebounds, some passing out of the center spot, he'll average usually around 2 assists in that number of minutes. He'll get you a steal. He'll inch close to a block. He'll turn it over probably 1 to 2 times a game. And he can usually do it, mind you, on mid to high 70s in free throw percent, so he's not going to kill you there. And he's probably going to shoot around 48% or so from the field. So he is almost as close as you can get to a 9-cat guy. He's like an 8, he's like a 7.5-cat guy. Because I guess he's not scoring that much. He's not helping you, but he's not hurting you there either. So Kelly Olynyk, to me, while he's playing 25 to 30 minutes, must own, must add everywhere. He should not be available in any leagues, and I own him in about 60% of the leagues that I'm in right now. The only one I don't, that I really care about, is a league that overvalues volume. It's that weird 11-cat league I sometimes talk about. I have him in all 3 of my standard 9-category leagues because he could disappear in 2 weeks like he often does. But if they're really starting to move things around in Miami, and Olynyk should be a guy that rises to the top. He's sort of the cream in this team. He should be in there. He could end up being a crazy awesome pickup this year if it sticks. I give him about a 50-50 shot because we've seen it before. He'll come in, he'll play well for 2 weeks, and then like a lot of the heat, he just disappears. But if it sticks, you're going to want to be the guy that has it. San Antonio, we were watching Derek White, but they got blown out. So throw this one away. We'll move on to the next one. Don't make any readjustments. And then Phoenix, we were watching because both Devin Booker and TJ Warren were out. Although it does sound like Warren is getting closer to returning. Booker's probably out for a week or two. A lot of things came of this basketball game, and we'll do our best to break them down quickly. Number one, Rashawn Holmes saw 22 minutes before fouling out. To me, he's a must-own guy right now. He's doing it in 16 minutes a game, and in a magical universe where it goes 28-20 between Ayton and Holmes, Rashawn could be a top 75 guy in 20 minutes a game. Elie Okobo got outplayed by DeAnthony Melton, who had a huge game in just 23 minutes. Of course, he's not going to hit 9 for 12 shots every night, so if you turn this into a 14-2-5 game, it looks a little bit less impressive. I'm not racing out to pick him up. I'm keeping an eye on him, absolutely. But let's remember, when this team gets healthy, they play a lot of Booker at the point. And if it's not Booker at the point guard's job is just to stand out there and give Devin the ball. So let's not get too excited about it, but let's obviously keep an eye on it. And then the last note here is Mikal Bridges, who had 3 steals and 2 blocks, and if he makes any of his 3-pointers, it's a gold mine of a fantasy game, but he just missed all of his shots. He's another watch list guy. I think you could stream these guys while Booker and Warren are out, and then Josh Jackson is your points league option because his percentages are going to kill you. He's one of the worst in percentages, but in points leagues, or DFS, as it were, I know they're not playing tonight, but that's the kind of guy that I would never think of putting in my lineup, and I obviously should. Let's turn our attention to today. Again, I want to remind everybody we've got that big DFS contest coming up. A cool way to get involved in that is to go to hoop-ball.com, click on the Premium tab, choose Go Premium, and then click the Get It Free option, which is a promo we have with DraftKings. So if you go to that page at Hoopball, it'll give you some instructions on how to do it. What ultimately ends up happening is you click through to DraftKings from Hoopball, so they know we sent you. You open up a new DraftKings account, put $10 in it. You get the premium membership to Hoopball for the rest of this season free. You also get a bonus $3 ticket from DraftKings, so you can enter one extra contest on top of the $10 you inserted. So you do all that, you end up with 4 $3 contest entries, $1 left over, and the premium membership that runs all the way through the end of the regular season. That's a pretty sweet deal. If you don't want to do anything on the DFS side, that's fine. We understand. You can actually get the premium membership for 12 standard US dollars right now. It's on sale for 15, and then go back and find one of the coupon codes from our podcast. And if you can't find one, just tweet at me. I'll let you know. I'll tell you one. I'm not shy about it. We'd love to have you on board. More premium members. Let's do it. Let's pack the house. Let's put some coal in this steam engine. That doesn't make any sense. Tonight, it is a medium/big Wednesday. It's 10 games. Not huge, but not small. Golden State is in Cleveland. The Warriors are favored by 11. I don't want anything to do with that basketball game, and there really isn't a whole lot I'm watching, frankly, in that game anymore, because as Cleveland's getting healthy, it's just getting worse. Denver is in Orlando. I'm throwing Jonathan Isaac into the mix against one of the best defensive teams in the NBA because screw it. He can do it against anybody. A good defensive game might even be better for him. Slow it down. Let's have some missed shots, some rebounds, some steals, some blocks. Let's do the good stuff. Come on, John. Make me proud. Washington is in Atlanta. Of course, we're always watching the Wizards. Is Kelly Oubre going to play well? Is Markieff Morris going to play well? Has Thomas Satoransky gotten swallowed up by the starting unit? On the Atlanta side, Taurean Prince expected to miss at least 3 weeks, which means more opportunity on the wings for Kevin Huerter. Huerter? I've heard him called just Herter before also. DeAndre Bembry and Kent Bazemore, so we're going to watch all 3 of those guys, although Baze should obviously be on your teams already. The line in that game is Washington by 4.5. I'm not laying chalk with the Wizards for any reason ever. Oklahoma City in Brooklyn. Thunder should be able to take care of business in this game. I'm not even watching Rondae Hollis-Jefferson anymore, although I admit I will look at his numbers in the box score because, as I've said before, fool me thrice, well, then I should just throw myself off a bridge. Oklahoma City, let's see if Nerlens Noel can just keep rolling, man. He's dominating these days. Clippers at Grizzlies. We're getting questions about Kyle Anderson again because he played like 28 minutes in their last game. Guys, if you didn't want the slow-mo stat set, you shouldn't have drafted the slow-mo. He's steals, blocks, assists, and rebounds. That's it. Don't expect him to score. Don't expect him to hit three-pointers. Don't expect him to make free throws. And expect his shooting percentage to be fine at a ridiculously low volume. That's who he is. If you don't want it, then get out from under it and stop asking me about it. Because I'm going to tell you to hold him because he's a 9-cat. He's a standard league value on the year. After that really slow start. I'll give you that. When he wasn't playing minutes the first 2 to 3 weeks. But since then, he's a top 100 guy. Stop it. He's fine. We're watching Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's been not as good the last couple of games after a couple where he looked better. I still don't really know what he truly is at this point. Perhaps we'll find out over the course of the next few weeks. Dallas, New Orleans, not really paying much attention to this game. I think we know what we can expect. Tim Frazier's the only question mark, and he continues to be basically an assists streaming option right now that I'm probably not using in almost any format. Detroit, Milwaukee, 0 fantasy questions from this game. Oh, by the way, Memphis is favored by 2 in that game over the against the Clippers. They got a little bit of a rivalry thing going on there. Let's not forget the Grizzlies and the Clippers played on the 23rd of November, and Memphis lost that game in LA 112-107. It was a good one. Lean to the Grizzlies in this. I love these mid-season revenge matchups. Teams do take these seriously, especially with the fact that the Clippers and the Grizz are in the Western Conference playoff race. I think they're separated by about 2 games. Memphis is going to want this one. And the Clippers are good. Let's make no mistake. They're playing their tails off, but they're also really deep. They're playing a bit over their heads. Okay, that's also true. And I like Memphis to cover 2 points in this game. New Orleans favored by 6.5 over the Mavericks. Not going to get involved in this one. Milwaukee by 8.5 against Detroit. Toronto, 6.5-point favorites against the Philadelphia 76ers. With all that Markelle Fultz stuff breaking yesterday, and I'm not even going to get into that on the podcast because to me, there's no fantasy relevance there. Not interested in this game and not interested in the fantasy ramifications. Charlotte in Minnesota. I think we're pretty well settled in on the Minnesota side now. Taj has won that battle. For the Hornets, let's see what Miles Bridges can do as the starter for a little bit, we think. And then Lakers-Spurs, not much to watch with the Lakers side. Rondo inching closer to a return. Spurs, we're keeping an eye on Derek White. And can Rudy Gay bounce back from a truly awful game yesterday? I think the Spurs, I don't know about winning this game, but after getting just demolished yesterday, I do believe they come back and play better. 9-point underdogs in LA after losing in Utah by 34. Lean to the Spurs side for sure. Big thanks again to Mike Apotria for hopping on the podcast today, helping us talk about DFS, breaking it down and telling me why I am terrible. He is right in all of the reasons that I brought up and then he agreed with. Tomorrow on the podcast, we're going to talk to Kyle McEwen of Basketball Monster, get a little assessment of the quarter-mile mark on the NBA season, and then, of course, Friday, live with Brewski. That'll be at 3 in the afternoon here on the Pacific Coast. Get the in-season membership, join our DFS contest, win a t-shirt, win some coffee from our boys over at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company, and win $15. If you need instructions, once again, tweet at me at Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today, football presentation, and a member of the Dash Radio Network. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.